Welcome to another episode of Mental Health Mondays, where we talk to guests who are either professionals in the mental health space, advocates for mental health, or those that live with or experience a mental health challenge. And just as a reminder, if you are watching this on YouTube, make sure you mash down that subscribe button so that you don't miss another episode. If you're joining us on Facebook or Instagram, most likely you follow us, but if you don't, make sure that you do follow us and share this information with anyone that you feel like it would be valuable. The point of Mental Health Mondays podcast show is to bring you resources and information around mental health and bring guests who can also give you information. So, without further ado, I do have a guest for this week. So, I'm going to go ahead and bring in Elle. Thank you so much for joining.
I'm so happy to be here, Kelly. This is a wonderful topic, and what you do is incredible. And I'm grateful to be able to serve today and share what I do, which is really fun.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I actually want to go back to high school for a moment because it will kind of solidify why I got into what I do today. Because I didn't just like wake up one day and say, "Oh, I'm going to be a performance coach now." When I was 47, like, why did that happen? When I was in high school, I was a runner and I wanted to run in college. And I I messed up my knees running in the wrong shoes my senior year. It's like I couldn't even walk. Like it was really bad. And we had a great team. I was the distance captain and I didn't want to leave the team. So I went to the coaches and said, "Could I apprentice coach with you and learn from you and just, I'll hold the clipboard, I'll take the stats, I'll do whatever you want. But I just don't want to leave the team." And so of course they would love someone to do all that. So I started working with a team and a little thing started to happen, especially at our big meets, where both like the boys and girls teams would be there at the same time. This little line of students would start to form. They'd just like be sitting on the grass as I'm like working with high jumpers or something, and they want to talk to me. And what they wanted was for me to share like how to stay calm before their big events. So it's like this very natural thing. I'm a performing violinist. I'm a professional musician. So I'd been performing on my violin since I was very, very little. Knew how to take a stage, knew how to, I'd never experienced stage fright, always just out there and doing it. And I was sharing some of that with these students. And so I got a little bit of a rep like, "Oh, just talk to her. She's going to calm you down." So fast forward, and in college, when I went to grad school, I was the first woman to be accepted into the orchestral conducting program at the University of Michigan, which was a really amazing program. We had, like, I've been in the room with Leonard Bernstein and Kurt Mazur. I've been in the green room with these amazing conductors. So it was a very high profile position. So I broke a glass ceiling, which was really cool. And my concerts were going great as a conductor. And then I got asked to play violin on something, and I really wasn't playing my violin as much at that point, but I immediately said, "Sure, I'll play." Well, at that little concert, which was just a little recital, we stepped out on stage and I just went into a full-blown panic attack. Like I never had any, we didn't even have those words in the 80s. Like we called it stage fright. But I thought I was having a heart attack. And for those of you who have had a panic attack, it's like, so it's scary. You might take yourself to the hospital because you think you're having a heart attack. My heart was beating out of my chest. My hands were sweaty. My face was bright red. Like I just felt so out of control. I had no idea how I was lead this whole thing with my violin. And so we got done, and it happened to be this one fellow's recital. And I just went up to him and said, I'm so sorry. I just ruined your performance. And he's like, "Well, what are you talking about?" So I was enough of a pro. I was like in my late 20s at the point, playing in professional orchestras. I was enough of a pro that I played well for him. But I went back to my apartment that night and I'm like, that can never happen again. I don't know what just happened to me, but I can't stand in front of a 70-piece orchestra and have a breakdown. Like it was awful. So because there really was nothing in the literature, like you couldn't find answers to what had happened to me, I went to the medical library. We didn't have phones or internet back then. So I went to the medical library at the University of Michigan, and I had done a project earlier for a class, and And so I knew some of the research librarians, and I just asked them for information on mind-body connection. I wanted to find out what happened to me. So I delved into all this like hard research, and I came up with some very simple little mental toughness tools, if you will, to always allow me to perform well on stage. Like that was my deal. And I've been using those for decades. So then fast forward again, I'm a mom of 3 sons. My husband and I have 3 beautiful children, and they're now adults, who all practice pressure-free living, which is very cool. They the 2 older boys were in high school. It was 2010, and they said to me, "Mom, we want you to teach your mental toughness tools that you teach your violin students and us to our baseball team. We would do so much better." Like we wouldn't it was a team that when they got behind, they just couldn't come back. They were not a comeback team. And my eldest son said, "I believe we could be a comeback team. We could win if they had what you teach us." So I started laughing, like, who wants their mom in the dugout? That's crazy, right? But they were serious. So I took my ideas, I wrote them out. My husband's a pro writer. He like tightened my language, threw in some funny baseball graphics that I really didn't understand. And I brought it to the head coaches or the 2 coaches, and um, they liked it. The head coach liked it so much that he on the spot hired me to be his private coach. Says, "I need to learn this. I need to understand this." So I worked with those boys, and kind of a defining moment was when I had a boy whose dad was a major league umpire on the team. So kind of like the baseball family, if you will. And I thought of all the boys here, like he might be the one who just disses me. Like he's not going to think this is worth anything because he doesn't know me. All he knows is that I'm the kid's mom, right? So I sat down on the grass, and I would just coach each boy for about 30 minutes in these mental toughness tips to help them perform better. So I start coaching him, sharing with him. And at the end, I stood up and I said, "Well," I put out my hand to shake his hand. He goes, "Oh no, Mrs. Ingalls, you get a hug for this. This is going to change my life." And I knew in that moment that this was something bigger than just a few little tips to help you when you're about to bat or pitch, that it was so much bigger than that. And now I've coached hundreds of people privately, thousands of people in groups, in retreats, as a speaker, and it has been incredible to see what kind of life-changing things happen for people. I've worked with students and adults who have been in anxiety for years, and in a matter of weeks, they break it. A woman who was in depression since the age of 10, she was 57. And as we worked together at I think it was about the 6-week mark, for the first time, really in her whole life, she did not feel depression. So it's really, really incredible. What I've created has this kind of incredible "I don't believe you" factor. Like, I love skeptics, by the way. Like I love when they come and they say, "I don't think you can help me because I've got this and this and this going on," or "I've been in anxiety for years," but what I help people do is understand their biology, understand how the biology of the fight or flight stress response is affecting their psychology. And there are a couple of really key things that I would love to share with this audience here. A couple of really key things that when you understand that, suddenly it all makes sense. And that's especially my clients who have been really locked in anxiety, sometimes for years. When they learn that, it's like, "Oh, this all makes sense now." And they take these tools that I've taught, incorporate them in. So it really becomes a lifestyle. Pressure-free living is a lifestyle. Um, and people do come to me for 3 different reasons. One is performance. Some people come because they want to make more money, or they want to earn a promotion at work, or they just want to get over their inability to speak in public very well. They want to do that better. And some people come to me for health. There could be a stress health region or chronic disease going on. All chronic disease, by the way, is either directly caused by the release of stress hormones or made worse by them. So they come to me for that reason, or relationship. Like they want a better relationship with someone in their family or work situations. They know that they're kind of self-sabotaging, or even a better relationship with themselves. That self-sabotage is so nasty. And as a professional musician, I've got enough hypercritical voice in my head to last 1,000 years. It's just how we're brought up and taught. When you're a classical musician, that's just what it is, really. And so yeah, that's how this whole thing got started, how I created Pressure Free Living. And I just have to thank mentors I've had and my sons for like really believing in me and believing that this. I have a mentor right now, is a speaking coach, who said, "Elle, nobody in your space teaches what you teach." And I taught 10 psychologists one day in my method, and I got to one point and I go, "You guys already know all this, right?" And they're like, "Actually, no, we don't." And that was really eye-opening for me. My youngest son just graduated from Columbia University in psychology, and he gives me all his books. So I'm like, okay, let me see, what are they learning? This is one of the best psych programs in the world. What are they learning about the stress response, which is, bottom line, the reason for ADD, ADHD, PTSD, all of it is the release of fight or flight stress hormones. And there's so little that they actually ever learn about it. So that's my expertise. Like, I just went really deep on it.
No, that's really good. I mean, there's a lot of important things that you brought up, and specifically knowing that you had to go and do the research, right? It's not like back in the day we had these apps that we could look up things, or Google that we could Google it, right? You had to go do the research to figure out, because it was called stage fright. It wasn't labeled anything at that point, nor did we
No.
fully understand.
Right.
And through that research, you started understanding and building your own methods, uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
which I think is
And
just really amazing.
right. And in fact, I go to as much source research as I can. And now every time that I read a research paper, I'm thinking to myself, yeah, but you just tested everyone who is already under the influence of the stress hormones. So your data is actually already corrupted. That's how I think now, because I want to create my own research on people that are pressure free and people who aren't. And we're going to see what goes on there. I'd love to share too, like really personally, how the method changed me, because I was a pretty, I was one of those girls who has always had, you have to have a lot of high self-esteem if you're going to be a conductor. Let's put it that way. So, so like I have a lot of high self-esteem. Think I was pretty cool, calm professional my whole other career. And when I was 47, I was creating this, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh gosh, I need to use my own method on myself. And here's what happened. My breakthrough, by the way, happened about the 8-week mark of using the method on myself. When I was 13, I had my first big violin competition, and my whole hand blew up in eczema, like cracked, bleeding knuckles, literally cracked and bleeding for 35 years. And then I'll show my hand up front here if you're on video and can see it. Like those, you couldn't have seen my skin on any of those knuckles. It would have been raw and so bloated I could never get a ring on that hand at all. In 8 weeks, my eczema completely disappeared and it has never come back. I would get bouts of stress acne that would just like flare up and then go down. I don't have any of that anymore. I have very sensitive skin. In fact, my husband's known me since I was 18. He can't really believe this is my skin because it is so much more healthy than it ever was. My breast tissues completely changed. So I always had dense, fibrous breast tissue. And in 8 weeks, we're talking a complete change. Like I couldn't even believe they were mine. It was like, oh my gosh. And my mom died of breast cancer. So I always thought in my head, it wasn't a question of if I might get it, but when. And when my breast tissues changed, it was like, oh my gosh. I can't predict, because for years I was under the influence of these stress hormones and pounding adrenaline every day within my system and really messing myself up. And so who knows, but I feel like I have a whole new leash on life. And then stress fat, like my upper torso as a distance runner, like I didn't really have a waist. You'll see this with triathletes, distance runners, like they're bands of fat. And I used to ask my mom about them. And of course, she didn't want me eating any less because I probably wasn't even taking enough calories as it was for all the running I was doing. That's stress fat. And it's to protect, which is why sometimes you'll have someone like a marathon or someone have a heart attack. Like you're actually flooding your body with too much adrenaline, bringing fat and glucose to the center of your body, including lining your arteries, which is why that can happen. So the stress fat just disappeared off of me. And I was like, oh my gosh. I've had people say like inflammation in their face or in their body just goes away in a matter of weeks. It just disappears. And it's because we create there's like levels here. When we trigger the stress response, the fight or flight stress response, we begin to do it chronically. It's like we're never out of stress hormone releases because there's two floods that go out at different times, and we're vulnerable and we'll just keep triggering and piling on in our days. And so that creates a chronic situation that affects the immune system. So now your immune system is always in kind of a habituated chronic state, which leads to chronic inflammation. And then that chronic inflammation is what leads to the chronic disease. So it's like, dun, 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 dun. Well, what if we can do something here and prevent the chronic release of stress hormones? Because the only reason we should ever trigger fight or flight is if we're under physical attack. That's our purpose for fight or flight. But we treat sounds, smells, people. Some people just have to see their boss walking down the hall and they trigger fight or flight. They're nervous. So they say public speaking is the number one fear. But actually it's not public speaking. It's public speaking in front of a certain people. Like you could be public speaking to kindergartners all day, but then you put the principal in the room, right? And now suddenly you trigger fight or flight. So yeah, so it's fascinating. My work is right at the top of that funnel, if you will. If we can not release the first flood of stress hormones, the second flood doesn't go out. You see cortisol in the news a lot today. Even the other morning, I wanted to write an article, stop bashing cortisol. And then it goes deeper. My husband goes, actually, if you cancel cortisol, you'll never wake up again. Like, cortisol is a beautiful hormone. It's a beautiful hormone. The problem is we're triggering the first flood of hormones, which are catecholamines. I call it a cocktail. And the biggest one there is adrenaline. So it's not the cortisol. That flood goes out later. Glucocorticoids go out later to fix your brain cells and your major muscles and your extremities from which we've wicked all this fat and glucose. We take fat and glucose out of our neurons every time we trigger fight or flight. One neurobiologist says you're just lining them all up on the edge of a cliff and they're dying. So we need the cortisol and the glucose to go out to fix these cells. It has a great purpose if you've triggered the adrenaline. However, cortisol can make you feel anxious for no reason. So if you suffer from general anxiety disorder, if you feel like you're lying in bed and you're safe, like everything is fine, you have food in the fridge, why are you worried? It can be your biology informing your psychology. You're biologically primed to have those kinds of feelings. So if we don't release the first flood, that second flood doesn't go out. I taught that to a young woman. She was 14. She'd been in chronic anxiety for 2 full years. A lot of life things had happened to her. And when I taught that to her, like the light bulb came on. And she goes, wow. She goes, so like 50% of the time that I'm anxious is just because of that like this flood went out and then this. And I go, yes, right. So she goes, and she had tears in her eyes because she's like, I have hope now. And one of the big things that I do, I always invite people to come on a complimentary call with me, a VIP session where we can identify some of those triggers for you. And I can share what I do. And it's that to me is like cracking into hope and possibility for someone, because that is the thing that can save lives. Like if we're in the muck and at the bottom, if there's just this little bit of hope, that's all you need for the trajectory to change. It's just the littlest bit of hope. And when I teach people about the biology of the fight or flight stress response, they're like, wow, okay, I can work with that. I had another young woman, she had been in a mental health institution on 3 different occasions. Anxiety was the big deal. After our first session, we got together on the second one. She goes, Elle, I can do this. I go, yes, you can. And it was just incredibly freeing that she realized she could get a handle on that first flood of hormones. So, so much is possible, especially if you felt in that hopeless situation, like I just can't get rid of a certain chronic disease, mental or physical, like I'm always going to have to live with this. I'm really here to say that that doesn't have to be true. If you can open up the possibility for something to be different for you, the moment you say the word open, your blood vessels even open. Like it's like, okay, okay, I can be a little open here, especially for my skeptics. I'm like, all I need is a little tiny opening here for me to teach you, and then we can be off and running. And one of the things I do with clients, like most coaches don't do this, but they can text me anytime, 24/7. If I'm awake, I'm answering. Because like let's say you can't get to sleep, it's 10 o'clock. If I'm up, I'll help you right. And for 5 minutes, I'll just give you some tools and we'll help you right then. I call this the silver rope of hope. Like, it's silver underneath this case.
I mean, there's a lot also with that too. I think we don't talk about stress enough and how those hormones that go into our body affect so many things. And like you said, it's that fight or flight. I mean, our brain naturally, it veers towards pleasure and away from pain. But how do we stop having those fight or flight moments happening all the time? And I think that's important, is that if you're constantly in stress or you're constantly in this fight or flight, then you're dumping all those chemicals and hormones into your body, which ultimately creates or manifests these challenges that people are having, whether it be mentally or physically.
Yeah.
And so understanding the biology, like you said, I think is really, really important. And I know that you said you wanted to share a couple of the actual tools.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So the pressure-free method that I've created, it's just 3 simple steps. Everything I do is very simple because we are complex. So I'm always distilling and bringing everything down as simply as I can so you can do it. That's why a lot of my clients are like, "Oh my gosh, I can do this." I'm like, "Yes, you can." Right? So targets, what are you aiming for? That's when I say be open, like what could, if it changed for you in 6 months, like what is that thing? Maybe it's that you're nicer to somebody, like you're not quite so snippy and snappy because stress hormones create that for you. It's not your personality, by the way. If you take a personality test, it's not the same once you become pressure free. It's not. I used to be very impatient. I'm an East Coast girl. I'm actually a brunette. Ding, ding, ding. Come on, I'll finish your sentences for you, right? And so it's like, I'm so patient now. My clients will say to me, how are you so patient with me? And I'm like, that's pressure free living. I get to be patient now. So beautiful. So, okay, targets. What are you aiming for? I didn't say I want to be more patient, but like some people actually, oh wow, somebody said this the other day, they said, "Oh, I don't know, this sounds a little crazy, but I just want to feel happier." I go, "Oh, that's so beautiful. Have it be an emotion. What do you want to feel? More joyful, more happy? What is it that you want to feel?" So it could be an emotion, it could be a promotion. You get to play with what your target is. Triggers. What makes you feel these emotions? Annoyed or angry, which kind of falls on a continuum, anxious or afraid, ashamed, and what do you argue about? If you can start to just open up your awareness, oh yeah, that sound kind of annoys me. Client I was just working with lives in the city, and when the buses make that air, the air thing, that gets her every time. So it could be a sound, it could be a smell, it could be a person, it could be the alarm that your phone makes. Do you have the Power Ranger? Wang, wang, wang. Is that what's waking you up? It could be triggering your stress response. So just opening up your awareness to what makes you feel any of those A emotions. So angry, annoyed, anxious, afraid, ashamed, and what do you argue about? In that moment that you first noticed that, I want you to ask this question. Is it worth messing up my body and my mind for hours, up to 9 hours for males, up to 24 hours for females, to react and overreact really, and release my stress hormones because of my phone alarm. Chances are you're probably going to say, no, it's not worth it. And if you have trouble saying no to that, I really want to help you, because that's a deep, like a deserving thing. Like, I deserve to have a beautiful life. I want you to have a beautiful life. I'd stand for that for my clients. So identify your triggers. Step 3 are tools and the 10-second solution. So from a resting heart rate, and of course this is individuated, so everybody's going to be different, but from a resting heart rate, you have about 10 seconds before that little mechanism in your brain, the amygdala, is going to tell your heart rate to rise up and the adrenal glands to release that first cocktail of hormones. They're called catecholamines. I just call it a cocktail because you're now under the influence, which can make you have some kind of nasty behavior too. You might get a little bossy. You might feel really broken and burnt out, like everybody has, or you might binge, by the way, like binge Netflix or binge what. We just want to feel good again after fight or flight. So this 10-second window is amazing. It's plenty of time for you to use the tools that I teach. I teach over 40 tools in my intro course alone, because everyone is unique. Like one person might resonate well with these set of tools, but this one over here is like, oh, those don't work for me. Like, I need this. So I created tools in 3 types. The first type are body tools, like using your body to prevent the release. The second type are mind tools, using your mind to prevent the release. And then the third type are life design tools, which I have very interesting time management tools, goal setting tools that are unlike other people's, where you don't feel pressure, basically. So you can feel a lot of pressure from goals. And so some people really resonate with a couple of those, and I just kind of lay them all out. What I'd love to do is just share a couple of these tools. One of the most effective tools to use right away is a big motion. An adult brain, when you do some sort of a big motion, what I do is have you push a pretend Ferris wheel. Okay, so it's very silly, right? And it's colorful, and there's lights and bells and whistles, whatever you want to put on your Ferris wheel. But a large motion is one of the only ways the adult brain can instantly create new neural pathways and create a new habit quickly. So we're trying to interrupt a pattern that you may have had for decades. And it could be generations old, because one of your parents did this every time this trigger happened. So, and their parents did it. So like, it's just been generational. You even built stress hormone triggers when you were inside your mom, because you reacted to everything that she did. So we're breaking things that are generations old sometimes. So I pretend there's a little Ferris wheel in front of my face, and I just push up in the air like this. It's just very silly. You can do it with me, Kelly. So just push in the air. Now, do you walk around like that all day? Because if you do, okay, good. So you need the motion to be a little unusual for your brain, your synapses to go like, oh, something new has to be created here. It's silly, so hopefully you smile. The smile can be used as a tool on its own. To me, it's a mind tool, because when the corners of the mouth go up, you stimulate a release of neuropeptides. Neuropeptides are little molecules that are required for all of our feel-good hormones to keep working. So I used to just go straight to dopamine, but actually it's these neuropeptides that are special little things. So now I'm just bringing them forward because we need to celebrate them. So when the corners of the mouth go up, neuropeptides come to the rescue, because that, again, gives you this moment to make a decision in how you want to respond to this particular trigger. Do I really need to go into fight or flight? Do we need to fight or run away from this thing? Or can I choose a different response? So smile is cool. The other thing is, go ahead and push your arms in the air again. Hold them up there. And now bring them down, but keep your ribs where they are. And you'll notice that you're in a higher posture. Like you've lifted your ribs away from your hips a little bit. So posture is a great pressure-free tool, because it tells your brain there's no way you're under attack, because if you're under attack, you're going to coil up to protect yourself. So just by rising up and lifting your ribs up away from your hips a little bit, it's a neuroscience trick to tell your brain, oh, I must be fine here. So if you can use any of these separately or combine them. I love combo tools because I don't know, I've got some triggers that need like way more than one tool to help me break it. And so combo tools can be very effective. So that's what I call the celebration Ferris wheel. And the fourth bit about this is that word celebrate. So I purposefully want my clients to celebrate every tiny little win because that spurs us to change that trajectory and have more success the next time. Even if you feel your face turn red, you get shaky or whatever, you're like, oh crap, I released the hormones. I still want you to celebrate because you had awareness, and the next time that trigger comes along, you'll stand a better chance. And it's going to take, look how long it took you to build these habits. But in a matter of weeks, we get to start to break them. And that's what my clients do. So it's really, really fun work. I never thought I would talk about hormones all day. I thought that was a bad word when I was a little girl. It's so funny, right? So it's like, I don't know. It's why I was put on the planet. After all the other stuff I've done in my life, it's like, boom, this is why I was put on the planet, is to shake things up around mental health and realize that if we can really get to the biology of it and teach people that, they will be empowered. So with my clients, like my goal is to work with you usually for about 3 months or so. Sometimes I work longer. I've worked with clients as long as 18 months. That's fine. But I don't want to have to hold their hand for 30 years. I want to be their friend for 30 years. Like I want to empower you and enlighten you so you start creating your lifestyle pressure-free. And that is really my goal always with my clients, is to help them be empowered.
That's amazing. And I mean, in lots of certificates and things that I've learned over the past several years, a lot of it is about triggers and what I always say, is this about me or is it about them? That's one thing that I ask myself. And if it is about me, then maybe I need to do a little bit more deep diving into myself and see what that trigger is. Or if it's about them, I can just let it go because it's not mine to hold on to. And so it's so relieving to be able to have that awareness. And I'm not saying by any means am I perfect, nor are you, but we all have triggers. We all have something that comes up, but we have the choice to either allow it to affect us or not. And I love that you just gave us some really tangible tools to be able to utilize in the future of when this starts to come up. And I know that you do work with clients. So this is your website, right?
Yep, you got it.
So this is the way that anybody can come and work with you. Is that correct?
Yeah. And I have all kinds of things for people, and I speak too. So if you have a group that could benefit, please reach out because I love training groups and helping people. If it's a close group, it's really cool. Like sometimes I do work teams and they get to help each other. That's really profound because when you all understand the science, then you can even see on somebody's face if they're starting to go into fight or flight. You can be helpful, which is really beautiful.
Yeah. And I love, I call them your brain's happy juices. That's what I call them. But yeah, simply smiling is one of those that I also discovered, and it helps release those happy juices. And now I have the actual names for them that you just said too. So.
Yeah. And I think too, I think of it, I used to talk a lot about positive, negative mindset. I've actually moved away from that more to talk about really optimal mindset. Because when I think about what I'm doing in my day, like if I'm working on a really serious piece of music, one might not say, oh, she's happy. No, she's like in this piece of music and this particular emotion's being evoked by that. I want to be in my optimal mindset to be able to produce the art that I really want. So I talk a lot these days about optimal mindset because I think some people feel like they fail if they're not happy with all the happy that's been talked about. So I've really moved into this idea, like we're going to get off the roller coaster. We're going to push a Ferris wheel, okay? Because we're lifting this whole thing up. We're getting rid of the highs, because if you're overexcited, you'll trigger the stress response as well. Like overhype, you will actually hit the wall at the 2/3 mark of your race or game or whatever you're doing. So it's like, let's lift this whole thing up so you're in the zone all the time. It's a beautiful feeling, and that is really what pressure free is about. Even if you have to go to that dentist office and hear the dental drills in the room next door. Like, I actually had a amazing C-suite exec who texted me from the dental chair, and she goes, "I love this lifestyle," in capital letters, pressure free. She goes, "First time in the dental chair, not triggering."
Wow, that's
So it's
amazing.
the little things too, you know? It's like our every little day things we have to do that can just literally throw us under the bus. And now we have to deal with a stress hormone cocktail for hours. We're literally offline for hours. And when
Yeah.
you can get online, it's there's nothing like it. Your brain will work in a different way. Your body will be healthier. Little things like with my hand, you might not think that was a big deal, but I actually had a little boy say, "Mrs. Ingalls, do you have leprosy?" That I was teaching. Because that's my bow hand, and he saw all this nasty stuff. He probably learned about that in Bible class or something, right? Like leprosy. I'm like, oh no, it's just a disease called eczema. Just a disease. Didn't even realize how much pain it was. Every time I washed my hair, every time I did the dishes, just excruciating pain that I was dealing with. And when it's gone, when the pain is gone from whatever your mental or physical ailments and chronic disease is, like when that's gone, it's like, oh, you're, you're finally feeling things maybe you couldn't feel before, or experiencing things that you just didn't even try before. Oh, that's another cool thing. Is like I gained an hour and a half to 2 hours in my day when I became pressure free. The woman I mentioned who had been in chronic depression since the age of 10, she gained 3 hours in her day. 3 hours of energetic, productive time where she could do really great things. And she's a marvelous human doing very cool things on the planet. So it's like, oh my gosh, that has just opened up her abilities in ways she never thought would ever be possible.
Yeah.
Ever.
I think that's amazing. Also, I was shocked when you said that it takes, men 9 hours and women 24 hours to get out of that response. That's just,
Yeah.
now,
And
now you know.
well, and here's what's going on, just to go a little deeper. It's like you release the first flood of hormones. Hours later, the second flood's going to go out. But they're creating all these side effects, of course, which is our symptoms. Oh, I'm anxious. Oh, I'm whatever it is you feel. And then to get the hormones dissipated out of all the cells, that's what takes so long. And then you're finally back to normal. And that second flood is so important because it actually is getting the sugar, salt, water content of the cells in your brain and in your extremities back to normal. The reason my hands had all this eczema is because nutrients couldn't get to my hands. The reason people have hair loss or acne or all this, like we've wicked the fat and glucose, and our nutrients can actually get out. So that's why everything starts to change for people, is that the food they're eating is getting processed correctly, because your digestion shuts down in fight or flight, which is why some people feel it in their belly. Some people have migraines and headaches and tension here. Some people feel it here, and then some people right in the gut. Some people all of it.
Yeah.
Right? All
Yeah.
of it. Just everything is messed up, you know. So yeah. I mean, there's so much I could teach this
Right.
audience.
No, I know. And I would love, of course, I love the brain and I'm so fascinated, and it's just, I think, amazing. But unfortunately, we don't have
We're out
much
of
more
time.
time left. So I am so grateful for you coming on and just sharing your expertise. And again, it's not that you went out and Googled anything, or you are incorporating all these things that you learned because you had to, and it was something that you wanted to understand. And over the years, you have really designed these strategies for pressure-free living that can help anybody and anyone, really anywhere. So I just really appreciate you sharing the three simple things that can ultimately help. So thank you so much for being a guest on today. And I know that just with this information, hopefully people can listen or go back and listen
Yeah.
and utilize these tools. But any last final words that you want to share?
Um, there's the sneaky doubt. Doubt creeps in. So we talked about the self-sabotage at the beginning, but one of the things that I see is like people will start to play with this a little bit, but then the doubt creeps in. And I just want to like open yourself up to the possibility that if the doubt creeps in, that you are worth it, that you're truly worth it. Um, to debunk whatever it is that's going on with you, like really debunk it, figure it out because you're worth it and you deserve a beautiful life. And that's something I say a lot, but I really stand for it. I really believe that for every human, no matter what they're going through, um, we can have amazing things happen. And so yeah, that's what I would think is watch for that sneaky little doubt.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again. I appreciate you joining me today as my guest.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly.
Yeah. All right, y'all. That was another amazing episode of Mental Health Mondays, where we talk to guests who are either professionals in the mental health space, advocates of mental health, or those that live with or experience a mental health challenge. And I just love how all of my guests seems to topple over each other and really sharing the information and resources and tools and tricks and all these things that we can really do centered around mental health. And just as a reminder, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you mash down that subscribe button so that you don't miss another episode, or follow us on Instagram, sure, why not? Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all the places, because we're everywhere. But as a reminder, BCC Evolution is a 501c3 nonprofit. And in order for us to bring all of this program and content and goodness, we ask for your support. And the easiest way, as I've said on multiple of these, that's the wrong, not about perfection, right? Text Climb for Mind to 3 to 4 4. Man, brain, come on. 44321. We are raising $60,000 for mental health and suicide prevention education. And myself and my friend Philip will be climbing up a mountain in August, 30 miles, to share the importance of mental health and suicide prevention. Again, it's going to be mentally, physically, emotionally challenging, something that I've never put my body through, and him either. And we really are on the goal to make sure that we climb the 13 times that will equal the amount that you would climb to Mount Everest, which is 29,029. And so make sure you go and donate. All of that, again, goes to mental health and suicide prevention education. And we're really looking to raise $60,000. What I want to give you, and I did this on the last episode too, but what I want to give you is, if you go to bccevolution.org, on our very front or home page, there are 2 different free downloads for you. There are the 7 strategies for mental health and wellness, and there's also a safety and self-care plan on that main page. If you are somebody who experiences or lives with a mental health challenge, suicidal ideation, trauma, depression, anxiety, or any of those things that we just talked about, and you're not currently living a pressure-free life, but you need to have extra support for those moments that you may get to those low points, go download our free safety and self-care plan. Again, that is a tool that you can add into your tool belt, along with all the great information that we went over today. And if you didn't have a chance to watch, go back and watch again, go back and watch again, go back and watch again, because I think all the tools that Elle gave us are really important. And once you become really aware of your thoughts, your process, everything that's going through your brain, you could potentially cure yourself. How cool would that be? And so adding all these little tools into your toolbox is so important. And that's why I give back to you in the way of these free downloads. So again, make sure whatever you do that you join us back next week for a new episode of Mental Health Mondays every single Monday at 11 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. Bye, y'all.